Over the last few years, as I've studied different world religions, I've come to wonder if the terms we use to describe religions really make sense and are helpful. Typically, we'll say something like monotheism, henotheism, polytheism, pantheism, panentheism, all these theisms. And I really think we might need to do away with them because I think they're obscuring things more than clarifying things. Here's what I mean. If I ask you, what are the monotheistic religions in the world, right? What are you going to say? You're going to say Judaism, Christianity, Islam, perhaps Zoroastrianism, perhaps Sikhism, depending on how well you know Sikhism. And then if I said, okay, what are the polytheistic religions in the world? Of course, everyone's going to say Hinduism. People will bring up, tribal religions that have different gods in them. And the Greek pantheon, say the Roman pantheon. And okay, at first glance, that seems to make sense, right? Polytheism has many gods, monotheism has one god. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that the word God, theos in Greek, in both Greek and English, there's a major problem, which is that the word God has a very large, wide range of meaning. Namely, a god can be anything from a supernatural created being all the way up to the supreme, eternal, uncaused creator. Well, those are very different types of beings. And the thing is that when you start seeing that and you kind of go below the first layer of, polytheistic versus monotheistic, you realize, are there any actual polytheistic worldviews out there? Because I don't really see any. So, for example, if we look at Hinduism, okay, technically they say, oh yeah, they've got like 300 million gods, which, okay, kind of, but also no, because Hindus are believing that all these different gods are just avatars of the one true oneness, Brahma. And so this Brahma is like, that is the one ultimate reality, God, as you would say. Well, the question is this Dvaita or Advaita? Is this dualism or non-dualism? As in, is this oneness the universe as a whole, or this oneness outside the universe as a creator? That is an interesting distinction. But in terms of the number of gods, the number of creators, there's only one. There's only one that exists in Hinduism, and then all the other gods flow therefrom, and are different avatars, different aspects of that one god. So, okay, is that polytheism? You might say, well, yeah, that's still polytheism because even though there's one ultimate supreme creator, there are other lesser gods, and that's polytheism. Okay, well, guess what? Christianity, Judaism, and Islam also have quote unquote lesser gods. I know, shocker, but it's true. In Christianity, we believe in the existence of what are known in the Bible as lowercase gods, sons of God, as in Psalm 82, for example, where we believe that there are supernatural created beings that God has given authority to rule over the world, and that these created beings are what people worship as gods. And so when someone worships, for example, Zeus or Krishna or something like that, we would say, as a Christian, I would say that is a real being, most likely that they are worshiping. It's not the supreme creator of the universe, but it is a real supernatural being that exists. And this has been the Christian and the Jewish perspective on this since Old Testament times. The Old Testament, calls, for example, Yahweh, the one true God, the greatest of all the gods. There's no other God like you. Well, guess what? If there are no other gods, if there's no other spiritual beings, then that's a meaningless statement. But of course, the ancient Israelites believed there were other spiritual beings. The question wasn't whether or not Ra or the Babylonian gods were real. The question was, are they more or less powerful than our God? That's the question. And so the Bible assumes the existence of other spiritual beings. It just says they're all lesser created beings. The only one true ultimate creator being is God. The same thing is with Islam. They wouldn't couch it in the terms of gods, lowercase g, but of course Islam has the concept of angelic beings with authority, and they would be called gods in other contexts. The Muslim traditions don't like calling them that, but in terms of what they are, there is no difference between an angel and a god. In terms of, if you define a god as a supernatural spiritual being that has power, that angels fit the bill. And jinn maybe or maybe not, depending on your demonology, your Islamic demonology. And so, okay, people will say, well, Christianity, okay, so Christianity and Islam and these other Abrahamic faiths believe in the existence of, other supernatural beings, but they're not believing in multiple creator, ultimate creator gods. Right, that's true. But then who does? What religious system has multiple ultimate creator gods? Right? Sikhism doesn't believe that. Buddhism doesn't believe that. Sometimes it's even like atheistic. Hinduism doesn't believe that. So, and then even if we go to tribal religions around the world, very often, and I'm not an expert in all, you can't be an expert in all the tribal religions, but those that I have looked into, most of them, if not all of them, seem to have, they'll worship either animistically, they'll worship the nature, or they'll worship spirits, or they'll worship ancestors. But beyond all that, they'll say, oh yes, of course, there's like one creator being who's responsible for the entire world, etc. Okay, well, again, is that polytheistic? No, it's not really polytheistic. That's the same perspective that Christians have, just, in terms of the number of gods, that we all believe that there's one creator God. So that's really my question. I don't really. It seems to me like we should stop using these terms because they're not actually capturing the distinctions between our worldviews correctly. The real distinctions are things like, what is the nature of these spiritual beings, the lesser spiritual beings? Are they beings that should be worshipped? Are they beings that should not be worshipped? That's the difference, right? In Hinduism, it's okay to worship a lesser spiritual being because it is an avatar of the divine, whereas in Christianity, that is blasphemy. You should not worship an angel or a higher spiritual being, because it's not only God, only the one true God is worthy of worship. So that's an interesting difference between worldviews. Another one is, like I mentioned before, the dualism versus non-dualism. Is the universe itself one, fundamentally one? That's non-dualism, or is it dualistic? Are different individuals different from the universe, and is the creator God separate from the universe? Is God a being that steps back from the universe and creates it, or is the universe God itself? That's an interesting distinction to ask. And there are plenty of other interesting distinctions to ask, but I think what happens when we talk about monotheism, polytheism, we get caught up in kind of unhelpful conversations, because when I'm talking to a Sikh, for example, they say, oh, we're monotheistic. Okay, but then they say, but Guru Nanak was the embodiment of the divine. I'm like, okay, well, we're not talking about the same thing, but we have the same label because we're just using monotheistic, meaning the one creator God. And so I don't really know. Comment below what you think we should do instead. I'm not really sure. I don't really have a better solution in the moment. Maybe do away with all these labels, but it seems to me like we really should stop calling things monotheistic or polytheistic, because on the level of the number of objective creator or ultimate creator gods that are out there, I think pretty much every worldview that I can think of has one creator God. So that's not the point of difference. So anyway, let me know your thoughts. I'm really curious to know. I've just been thinking about this for a while. And yeah, hopefully this has been interesting. I hope you have a blessed day. Thanks for watching.